Welcome to yet another episode, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, episode 390. I am your host, Michael. Joining me this week, uh, Gail from nyfights.com. Hope to have Daniel from For Boxing News and the Inscriber uh, later on during the episode. What's going on, Gail?
Hey, it's the beginning of a new boxing year. It's just as crazy as the last boxing year.
Right. Um, for those who are new to Pound for Pound Boxing Report, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, um, live YouTube show, podcast, website, blog, etc., discussing all things boxing. The motto is when boxing is good, we'll talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it pertains to the sweet science, it will get discussed. If you want to find out all information about Pound for Pound Boxing Report, the website is the place to go to, p4pboxingreport.com. If you wish to email us questions, comments, whatever you like, as long as it's not too negative. Um, you can do so. P4P Boxing at P4PBoxingReport.com. Also on the site, if you do some navigation around along the top of the screen, top of the page, excuse me, you'll find links to where to check out Pound for Pound Boxing Report all over social media. Links to the YouTube channel, links to the Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, IG page. Also links to where you can catch the show on our RSS feed distribution platforms, be it Anchor, be it Spotify, be it Google Podcasts, be it Apple Podcasts. We're just about everywhere. Also on the page, you got links to where you can donate. Let donation be the best nation. It would not matter. $1, $2, $5, whatever you could share. Excuse me. If it's in your will, please shoot a little bit of coin to the Pound for Pound Box Report. It'll help the overall production behind the scenes. If you're checking us out live on YouTube or just checking us out on YouTube on general, please make sure to hit that like button and also hit that subscribe button. Uh, in that notification button where you'll get notifications of all upcoming episodes. It'll help the overall algorithms and get us closer to being monetized. Last but certainly not least, on the site, please check out the link to Beachbody on Demand. If you're looking to get your body right, get everybody's doing New Year's resolutions, and most of those resolutions, at least early on, is regarding health and wellness. Beachbody on Demand got programs for all fitness interests. If you're looking to really challenge yourself, I suggest you check out 6 weeks of the work. Um, if you're looking to do a morning type of program, I suggest you check out Morning Meltdown. Um, if you're looking to lift weights, I suggest you check out Lift 4. If you're looking for a boxing specific program, I say check out 10 Rounds. 10 Rounds, a 6 week program, 5 days a week of workouts, 3 days devoted to boxing based cardio, 2 days a week devoted to resistance and weightlifting. Again, at the very least, please take advantage of the 14-day free trial. And that is with the free trial, you get 14 days of free access to any and all programs on Beachbody on Demand. Let's get things going. Recap. This is going to be a mainly recap and news episode. Let's get things going, Gail, by taking a look back at the card that took place on Showtime pay-per-view in Washington, D.C. The main event, of course, was Gervonta Tank Davis uh, put his lightweight belt on the line against junior lightweight champion Hector Luis Garcia. And interesting, this fight was interesting in a multitude of ways, right? Uh, Garcia was giving Tank some problems early on. He was hanging right in there with Gervonta Davis from a boxing perspective. But for me, Tank looked better in this fight than he did against Rolly. And and the interesting thing about that aspect about that, Gil, is that in my opinion, Hector Luis Garcia is a better overall boxer than Rolly Romero. Of course, Tank stopped Romero in 6 rounds. In this fight, Tank stopped Garcia in nine at the beginning of round 9. Garcia was complaining of having vision issues. Overall, Gail, Tank was smoother in this bout. Uh, his punches flowed better. Dare I say, from a skill perspective, he's showing some improvement. That coupled with his power, that improvement from a boxing perspective helped him eventually get to Garcia in round 8, and ultimately Garcia basically said no mas at the beginning of round 9. Assess Gervonta Davis's performance. Do you think he's an improvement from the skill department? He gets lauded for his power, but dare I say, yeah, Tank is becoming a more evolved, more complete fighter here.
Yes, he is a more mature, a more patient fighter, a more well-rounded fighter with a much better arsenal of skills to deploy. Power is great. Power, can be game changing. Ask Deontay Wilder. Ask anybody who's a pure power puncher. But there comes a time in every power punching fighter's career that what do you do if you just can't land that big punch? Well, you better have a plan B and a plan C and a way to tweak those if you need to. And that is what Davis did. He deployed all the other skills that are important around the power punching, which starts making it really difficult for his opponents to find a weak spot to get at him. Garcia started off with some promise because Tank is very patient, and he's gotten even more patient and even more economical in his punching as he's gotten older. So if you come roaring out of the gate, you trust your engine to get you through that whole fight. If you burn out that first stage of the couple of, early rounds, maybe you'll catch Tank unaware. And he made some progress. He did a lot better on the cards than I think most people expected. But Tank is going to pick you apart, figure you out, and if you can land that punch, you're gone. And that's what happened. And it was such an odd knockout. And it really was a pure knockout. In my eyes, watching Garcia go back to his corner after that 8th round and talk to his trainer, yes, he walked back under his own power. He had no idea where he was. He couldn't see. His cage was so rattled. He might as well have been face down on the canvas. I wish his corner had provided him a little better cover to say, hey, you, ringside physician, get over here and look at my guy. It doesn't look too good. Could you check him out? Have the ringside physician stop the fight, which truthfully is what should have happened. And a good corner will do that. So your fighter doesn't take the hit of a no mas situation. But it didn't really come together. Garcia is going to get that sort of criticism. I don't personally think that's fair. He wisely decided he would live to fight another day, or his corner decided that. Circumstances dictated that it really would have been a bad idea for him to get back in there and go out on his shield. Because we all know it would have been a beatdown of epic proportions, very ugly, really kind of unnecessary. But was this the most thrilling, action-packed fight? No. Was it the smartest possible way for Davis to approach this fight, given the high stakes down the road? You bet it was. Absolutely. And no distractions. For anyone who was worried about, he's got a lot of stuff going on outside the ring, he's got a court date next month. Boy, that young man, I still think of him as a young man, has the ability to compartmentalize. Great athletes do that. Some people call it focus. He's got it. So for him, it was a very good performance. Whether it thrilled the crowd or not, it certainly set off a ruckus in the first few rows during the fight. And for Pete's sake, a lot of his audience, with a 1 a.m. Eastern start, They were asleep. They had to watch it on replay the next morning.
Absolutely. First of all, Daniel from Full Boxing News in the Inscriber has joined us. We'll go to him in a bit, but want to give a shout out to a friend, a mutual friend of ours, Lee Groves. First of all, Lee, again, the open invitation is right there for you. If you want to be a part of the show this evening, please let me know. I'll send you the invite link. He says in reaction to the fight, he says, Lee, that Tank is not an excellent fighter over the long haul, but the endings of his fights are exciting. So exciting that we tend to forget the long periods of waiting that must be endured in getting there. In this fight, I push back a little bit because yes, yes, Tank Davis is a bit of a slow starter, but in this case, I think he was more methodical, more patient, on purpose because he knew beforehand who he was in there with from a skill perspective. In his last fight, I think he was a little bit worried because the physical size, strength, and power of Rolly, he felt that, right, and he didn't want to go in there and wade in and possibly get hurt. On this occasion, he knew that he had to be A1. He had to be sharp, and he noted before the fight that Garcia has a very sneaky counter left hand, as a counter, and given that, yeah, it may not have been the most exciting fight, but I think it was arguably his most complete performance throughout all his years as a champion. I go to you, Daniel. Your breakdown of the fight.
Well, this was an interesting to see Tank just slow start the way he did, because I think he understood. A lot of good fighters understand this, because Garcia in the first few rounds he was landing the better shots, he was landing the body shots, the jab was being effective, but all of that, unfortunately, he didn't have the hand speed and he didn't have the power
Right.
to counterbalance Tank. And I mentioned it on Twitter that that's the key. Like, Garcia did a lot of good work, but when Tank threw and he started throwing in the third, fourth round, his punches were flashier, his punches were crisper, and his punches were faster. And those are things that judges pay attention to. Now, in this case, luckily, it didn't have to go to a judge in this case. He hit Garcia with a really good shot that I do not know if it was a nerve ending, because I myself lost like movement and have my face for a bit when I was a teenager because I bit a Doritos chip wrong. God knows what type of hit you have to be where you literally for a minute go blind in one eye. Because you knew something was wrong at the end of the eighth round because Garcia was just standing there. The referee had to tell him, no, you have to go there. That's your corner there. You have to go there. That's the shot that shocks you. And that's Tank's main saving grace. It's kind of this, it's not as blatant as with Wilder, but it's very similar because luckily Tank, at least he knows how to feint. He knows how to really do the high guard, and he knows what to counter fairly well. But in the end, though, he could be losing on the cards. He wasn't in this case, but he could be losing on the cards. But one shot can end the fight in his favor. And like I said, he did show a good amount of poise. He didn't try to rush in. That was actually a good thing for Tank. Most people probably figured that if he was really nervous, like Gail mentioned, if everything that's been going around him would have really affected him, he would try to come in guns blazing, trying to get a quick knockout. No, he stayed patient. He let Garcia show his game plan, and then he countered it. and he landed the shots, and as the fight went on, he kept winning the exchanges. So it was a good showing as far as in the area and Tank, but what it also still shows is that as long as he has a hand speed advantage, he'll win the fight. There's not a lot of opponents now in the higher echelon of his weight class division that are going to give him that advantage. So hopefully this is not a sentiment of you're still fighting mid to tier, good tier contenders, and then when you truly get to the top, your ceiling shows. I hope that's not the case for Tank because he did do a good job on Saturday night. Even if I agree with Gail that by the time it was over, the clubs were already closed and it was last call.
Yeah, and Lee's going on to say here, he makes a comparison here. I'll read it right quick. He said, wrong one. He says that it's clear that Tank has a high IQ. You can see him doing what must be done to get in proper range, and once he lets his hand go, then wham, that's it. But like Canelo, his low work rate will cost him someday. Could it cost him in his next fight, which is scheduled to be against Ryan Garcia? Wrote an article about this. Tank saying that he's ready on his end. Garcia chimed in that he's going to basically that is on. Even gave a date for the fight of April 15th. You can find that article over on 3kingsboxing.com. Please check out 3kingsboxing.com. Your source for pure unadulterated boxing information. Excuse me. Shout out to the entire 3KB crew. 2K, the head of 3KB. Bo, who you heard on the show numerous times. Senior writer, head of media relations. Yours truly, fellow senior writer. Red, who does a lot of the work behind the scenes on the site and whatnot. Garcia gave a date, April 15th. So we're going to presume that's when the fight is going to happen. It looks like it's almost a done deal. Lee talked about slow start for Tank. The one thing that Ryan Garcia does in Gail and Daniels is that he's a quick starter, right? And he has quick hands and he has good power, particularly with the left hand, the left hook to the head and body. A quick jump forward to that fight, right? Assuming that we see it on the scheduled date of April 15th. Your early analysis of Gervonta Davis and Ryan Garcia.
Yep. Ryan has to leverage his speed, his conditioning, and he has to come out fast. He will have a chance, and I think a pretty damn good chance by being the busier volume puncher, giving himself every opportunity to land that shot. He can't play the economy game, just as Lee, congratulations to Lee, our man of the year by the Boxing Writers Association of America.
Congratulations, Lee.
Yeah, Lee is right. Tank is very economical like Canelo with that work rate. It works for him. His connect percentage is incredibly high. His power punching connect percentage is over 50%. That's amazing. But it's of a low rate of punches. I believe Lee will tell us, but I believe it's in the low 30s around. Ryan is very well conditioned. And I think his motor will serve him well. He needs to be busy. He needs to come out fast. He needs to jab. He just needs to be in motion, moving, just a whirl of activity. He can land the punch. He does have good vision and good ring generalship skills. He has the ability to take that step back and look at the big picture. Listening to him describe landing a knockout punch is fascinating. He's very clinical about it, and he's right. He has a real photographic memory in that way of describing the mechanics. I think he can do it if he can get it done in the first half of the fight. The longer, thank you very much, Lee, 30 punches around, yeah. if Ryan can keep busy and get his business done in the first half of the fight, maybe he bags 6-7 rounds on the cards. That's his best chance. The longer the fight goes, the more in danger he is. Tank tends late in his late fights to take these guys out after he's, sort of cruised economically through those early rounds of the fight, first half of the fight. Ryan can't let him do that. And it is a fascinating matchup. Styles make fights. Boy, we love that phrase, but completely true in this case. I think the lead up will be fun, but we do have something to worry about, and that is Tank's court date in Baltimore Circuit Court or County Court on his hit and run case in February. So I think we'll still get the fight, but I do think it may be delayed. We may not see it in April. I think we might see it in June or July. I'm okay with that. Then Ryan's going to need to make a decision. If that's true, does he still fight on April 15th? Does he honor that date and decide to go ahead and face another opponent? We'll see. And yes, Lee, good guy, man, not man of the year. You're our man of the year. You're our man of the year. Good guy is the formal awards name. And you know what? There aren't a lot of good guys in boxing. So when you find one, it's worth celebrating.
Indeed. I hear your points about the things that Ryan can do well. He can do all of that, but there's still one glaring weakness, and I'll go to you on this one, Daniel, is that I see flaws from a defensive perspective. Mainly, he has a habit of fighting with his head up, right? And chin up specifically. He doesn't always fight with his chin tucked. So he can do all those things that Gail noted, and yet he can still get caught. And with the power of Davis, he can hurt anyone he can hit. He can knock out anyone he can hit in that 130, 135 range. So Ryan he could get off to the good start, right? He could be doing well, but yet Gervonta Davis only needs one shot, and that's it. I'm not going to predict the winner here right now, but for me, I want to see how Ryan Garcia improves, if he improves from a defensive perspective.
This is a very interesting fight to gauge, a very fun fight to engage, because, like Lee mentioned, this is the best opponent for each guy that each guy has faced. And both have faced like lower tier or medium tier contenders, but they've never faced as somebody that's in that caliber. By the way, Mr. Lee, congratulations on the award. What's going to be interesting to me is Ryan. Yes, Ryan has defensive flaws. Yes, he doesn't tuck his chin in. But that also does get negated by the fact that he has amazing hand speed. And that's what I want to see if the fight happens in April, or if it happens on a later date. If something happens where there's an exchange and between Ryan and Tank, and then Tank realizes, oh no, his hands are faster than mine. Because that to me is what's going to happen. It's a situation where he's going to realize that Ryan takes away his advantage in hand speed. And at that point, are you going to try to pick up the pace to do so? Because as flawed as he is defensively, Ryan is pretty sound offensively. And especially when it comes to the seat where you're a fighter that is shorter than he is, which in this case Tank is going to be. That's what's going to be telling in this fight. How much can Tank adjust to the fact that he's not going to have the hand speed advantage the first time in a while where he's not going to have that advantage, and facing to somebody that could probably hit as hard as he can at the speed that he can. Tank has knockout power, but let's not forget Ryan does too. And Ryan, and this is another interesting situation because it wasn't to me the situation with Rowley, it wasn't to me the situation with Barrios. Ryan is still the bigger guy. And that's exactly right, Lee. That's the first thing actually that people say when they try to say that Tank will knock him out. Oh, Luke Campbell hit him on it. But he recovered. He recovered from that and was able to get poised and win the fight. Will Tank hit him something similar? Just might be, but this is a situation where you have to see if Ryan lands the shot first, and there's a legitimate chance that could happen.
Anticipation is going to be high for this fight. Both guys are not just boxing in a boxing context, but they're not just stars in the boxing contest, but both have mainstream appeal outside the sport. Both guys can hit. I think both guys are hittable. It's going to be tension forever. However long the fight will last. You could just see a scenario where the crowd is going to be, on the edge of their seats, waiting for someone to get hit, and I just don't think this fight is going to end in a distance. I don't think the fight will go the distance. Excuse me. Fingers crossed that it will happen. I hope it happens in May. But if it's pushed back to May, June, given the legal issues with Gervonta Davis, the bottom line for me is do not let this fight disappoint us in the same way that Spence and Crawford disappointed us last year. So yeah, all signs point towards this fight happening. Let's hope it does. Let's move on to some undercard fights here. Going to get both of your opinions on this next fight. This next fight we're going to talk about coming up. Jaron Boots Ennis Daniel has been the talk of the boxing community, right? Top welterweight contender. Many feel that he's a world champion, a superstar in waiting. There are some who believe that he could not only fight with the likes of Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford, that he could beat the likes of Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford right now. Well, he fought interim IBF, vacant interim IBF title fight against Karen. My apologies for butchering this guy's last name, Chukhadzhian, excuse me. All right. And coming in, the anticipation was that Boots was going to beat Karen Chukhadzhian, not just beat him, but stop him and stop him with ease. Didn't turn out that way. Chukhadzhian was on the move a lot. Didn't give Boots a set square target, and Jaron Ennis had trouble cutting off the ring, fighting the punches to slow him down, and with the distance for the first time of his career, he got the win. He's interim champion, but the thing that I got from this fight is that for those who think that Ennis can beat the likes of a Crawford, the likes of a Spence, not based on this performance, no.
This was a tale of you got to look at it with the good and you got to take a look at it with the bad when it comes to Boots. The good is he went the rounds. He never went past, I think, the 7th round before. And he was able to get there, and he didn't show any signs of fatigue. He didn't show any signs of frustration. So that's the good part of it. On the bad side of it, unfortunately, is the fact that but one person can say, I'm not gonna pronounce Karen's last name. I'm sorry. I probably can't. But well, one person can say that Karen ran the ring throughout the whole night. The argument can easily also be made then that Boots wasn't able to cut off the ring. And that's something that you need to do when you're at the elite level in the sport, especially in this division, welterweight. Because Bud has good footwork. Spence has good footwork. And even the fight on the back foot, and they make it hard for you to cut them off. That's the areas that Boots needs to start working with. And starting to show it because, yeah, you got an interim belt. That means at some point you're going to be fighting. You're going to be fighting for the actual one, especially if it's the IBF. So I wouldn't say that this would be the quote unquote exposed section when it comes to fighters, but it does show that there is growth that Boots still needs to show. Because once you get to a certain point, the level of competition does go up. And he needs to start focusing on that. And it could be also to the point where, like with a lot of other fighters, it has maybe reached a point where he may have to move on from his original training team. And that can be good, that can be bad. But at the end, in order to grow, especially if you want to grow in that division, it's really best to do so now that you know that you can go rounds, but that there's flaws still in your game.
As Lee said in the public chat, Gail, um, some ask if Boots was exposed. Was he?
I so dislike that word exposed. What does exposed mean? Does it mean that a fighter didn't possess the skills you thought he did? He wasn't as good as advertised? He didn't meet your expectations? Sometimes it's a matter of a learning experience with the fighter. Everybody hits those patches. They're supposed to be in there to learn. They're supposed to be in there to gain skills and get better. And sometimes that means a fight isn't as flashy or exciting as maybe you remember it. And we have all saddled Boots with very high expectations, right? He's the next great American star in boxing. He's the next big thing. Everybody keep your eyes on Boots. It's all about Boots. Boots is going to take over the glamorous welterweight division. That's a big, big burden. Expectations are heavy things to carry. I thought Boots handled the outcome maturely. He was in there with a guy who was known to be durable, known to go rounds, known to endure. If he had to do it by minimal engagement, he would, and he did. That's a good experience for Boots to go those rounds. Let's bear in mind what happens to fighters like, let's pull out Edgar Berlanga. It did not serve that young man well to get all those first round knockouts without being able to work on his craft and build his skills. You could only do so much in the gym. So much of that learning happens under the bright lights with the noise of the crowd, the adrenaline rolling through your veins. Those are the lessons that stick when somebody's unpredictable. And when things aren't going so well, in sparring in the gym, you can say, hold on a minute. You can't do that in a real fight. It's a completely different thing. So this is what Boots needed. This will benefit him so much down the road. Now, for us as fans, did we hope for more? Did we expect more? Did our friends who we'd all told about Boots Ennis look at us like, this is the guy? This this is the guy that's supposed to be the next big thing? And so we walk away disappointed. But that's on us. That's not on Boots. He's got a lot of road ahead of him, lots of opponents, lots of opportunities. Um, this would do him nothing but good, even if his fans were perhaps a little disappointed in not getting the exciting outcome they hoped for. It also tells everyone, should tell everyone, that it is really important to stay busy, because a guy that hasn't had a lot of rounds in or hasn't had them in recently, it takes a little time to get the motor running. It just does.
Yeah. Look, did Jaron Ennis look quote unquote impressive in this fight? No. Matter of fact, towards the in the latter rounds, the DC crowd, you heard a smattering of boos, but ultimately, but in the end, let's keep this in perspective, right? All fighters, young fighters on the come up, young talented fighters have to go through this kind of experience where things don't come so easy to learn, and that's what this fight should ultimately learn be for Jaron Ennis, and that was a learning experience, and I'm sure he will be better as a result. Um, but still, but still, I say, for those who think he can beat the likes of a Spence, the likes of a Crawford, right now, no, he still has some learning to do. He still has some more seasoning. He's not fully cooked, right? And this fight proved that. But yeah, he will get better as a result of this, and no doubt about it. I'll split these next two fights up. One more comment from Lee. I'll read it right quick. I see Karen as a skilled operator, but against Boots Town, he had no real path to victory, but he fought like the same man I saw on tape. And on balance, he did the best that he could. He also says that the over under on this fight was 3.5 rounds. That's a mix of how highly regarded Boots was and how unknown Karen was. Anyone who saw Karen fight on tape knows he is capable, excuse me, of fighting at least. Like I said, and again, thank you, Lee, for your comments throughout the show. Keep them coming. Again, once again, if you want to come on and be part of this particular crew this evening, the the invite is open. I'm going to split these final two bouts from this card. How do I want to do this? I'll go back to you, Daniel. Ennis doing the pre-fight, right? He had got during the final press conference, he had gotten into a dust up, into a back and forth with fellow welterweight contender Rashidi Ellis. Ennis fight against Chukhadzhian was for the interim IBF belt. Ellis fought Roiman Villa in an IBF welterweight mandatory. The plan, I believe, was if Ellis would win, he would fight Ennis later on this spring or in the summer, right? Well, those plans kind of went to you know where, as Villa spoiled the apple cart, winning by majority decision. Um, Personally, I felt that Ellis did enough to win, even though in the last two rounds, the last round in particular, he was in all kinds of trouble, went down twice in the final round, and basically out on his feet. And if this was an old school 15-round fight, he probably would have been stopped. But we're talking 2022 here, and we're talking 12 rounds. I felt that I felt that Rashidi Ellis won 8-4 on my card. So even if you consider the two knockdowns late, that still would have put Rashidi Ellis by 2 points on my personal card. A lot of people were upset at the decision, feeling that Ellis won. first and foremost, do you think that Ellis won? Two, your thoughts on how he kind of crumbled, particularly in that last round.
When it came to
Not
the fight,
crumbled, but came apart. Excuse me, but came apart.
it could be the same way Cromwell came apart, but this was a situation to me where you underestimated your opponent because Villa stayed composed throughout the first half of the fight. And that's the half of the fight where most people thought that Ellis was going to breeze through this fight. And I personally, without the knockdowns, I probably would have scored a draw. Because the second half was where Villa started to show his poise and you started to see opposite of what you didn't see with Boots or Rashidi Ellis. You saw a bit of frustration. You saw a bit of nervousness that ultimately led to him falling apart in the 12th round the way he did. That was, like I said, because those two knockdowns are the things that cost him the fight. Because otherwise, it would have been a majority draw, which means they'll probably do it again, but you still would have the same questions. And what this fight showed me is exactly the reason, and why Golden Boy, who does pair their contenders tough, and where Rashidi Ellis been one of their, at one point, been one of their top guys at welterweight before he left, it did answer the question like why they never attempted to put him against Virgil. Because if somebody would have gone the first fight the way he did and come apart the way he did in the second half, Virgil would have made sure that Rashidi Ellis wouldn't have gotten up. It's a very difficult fight, and to gauge, like I said, I had it a draw. I can see how people can give it to Rashidi Ellis because he did use his footwork a lot. He did use his jab really when the first half of the fight. But unfortunately, at the end of the day, if you can't break down your opponent ultimately, and you were in the position to really be a contender, which unfortunately I think Rashidi was at that point, it was going to fall apart on you, unfortunately. And there's a situation where, yeah, it's going to be now one step forward, two steps back. Hopefully, like I said, he picks up his mindset. He gauges what he needs to do because now he's got to look at a point where he's not in the picture as far as the young guns, at least for the remainder of the year, when it comes to the young guns of welterweight, as far as getting almost close to the title picture. Which is bad in a sense because Rashidi Ellis was one of the guys that was one of the dark horses as far as prospects and fringe contenders.
Yeah, and now he has to pick himself up after suffering the first loss of his career. Um, I'm guessing that a rematch will happen. Um, can he finish this time, unlike he did in last weekend? It's a wait and see. It was just, in spite of the fact that I felt that Rashidi Ellis won, it was a bit worrisome how he was in such distress over the last couple of rounds. It raises questions about his durability. It raises questions about his chin. We will see what he can do if should they fight again to improve. And as you said, Daniel, maybe this is why he didn't fight Virgil Ortiz. Maybe this is why Golden Boy had no problems with parting ways with Ellis. We will see what he does in the aftermath of this rather surprising loss. I go to you, Gail, on this last fight. We're going to talk about the return of one of the more polarizing figures in the sport, Demetrius Andrade, two-division champion, 154, 160. We all know 2021 was pretty much a disaster for him. Um, was set to move up to 168. Injuries kind of thwarted his year. Got a lot of criticism when he decided to vacate the middleweight belt instead of fight Janabek Alakanuli. Made his debut at 168 pounds over the weekend. Fought a guy by the name of Nicholson, and he scored technically 2 knockdowns, right? But the same things about Andrade that has so many fans ticked off about him came into play once again. As talented as he is, to me, a justified criticism, is that he doesn't know how to finish guys off. He got the win here, easy win, but I'll ask you what I asked Bo while talking about this for Three Kings Boxing on the Three King Boxing Twitter space. What is up with Andrade and his ability to keep the pedal on the metal? He had this guy going, right? I think there were points where if he would have just pushed a little bit harder, he could have got a stoppage here. But he settled once again.
Yeah, he did. And it's frustrating. I really like Boo Boo. I like him. I want to like the way he fights as much as I like him. But he's such an acquired taste. And it's a problem. He can win fights like this all night, all day, every day. And he knows it. He knows it. And he just has no reason to press play any harder than he does. You know, he got a few knockdowns, on the way to the win. He looked good. I mean, he got a shutout. And I'm sure in his mind, he thinks, for Pete's sake, what more do you want me to do? What's the point? Why should I risk my health and welfare when I don't need to? And that's where he is. Now, in the long run, for the rest of his life, will that serve him well? Yeah, it will. He's going to emerge from boxing as healthy as anyone can, have a long, rich life, I'm sure, outside the ring. He can keep winning. The O is not a problem for him, but he is never going to have that rabid, devoted fan base that guys have who just throw caution to the wind. And, talk to Timothy Bradley about deciding to throw caution to the wind and really messing yourself up to turn the fan base around and get them on your side forever. And he did that. And a lot of guys do that. Is it to their long-term well-being? No, no, it's really not. So I get it. I don't love it. And it's awful. I feel that I should respect this decision he's made. Can he rise to the occasion if somebody, comes at him like a human buzzsaw, like a very motivated David Benavidez or Caleb Plant? That's what we all want to see. Or, if they get the weight divisions right and we see, the bigger Mr. Charlo move up, I'd like to see it. I'd like to see what he's capable of. But in the meantime, is he the guy that you call all your friends and say, oh, you got to see this guy like we all did for Boots Ennis or even Virgil Ortiz? No, no, he's not. And that's why he was the opening fight in a 10-rounder, and he's a current world champion on the undercard. That's why.
I have nothing more to add. Look, I still feel that Canelo was wrong for not fighting this dude when Andrade has been chasing him for years. But at the same time, throughout his career, he's kind of shot. He's kind of pulled a Cheddar Bob and shot himself in the foot repeatedly, and that aspect of his career, you have to acknowledge, and it is a sad indictment that here he is, A2 division champion, right? One of the best fighters at 160, 168 pounds, and he's the opening bout on this kind of pay-per-view card. Um, Hopefully he'll land a big fight at some point before he decides to call it a day. But yeah, yeah. He's that perpetual struggle guy who's high risk, low reward, and you wonder if he'll ever get that big fight at this point of his career. let's move on to news here, and uh, a lot of news over the before we began the live, before I hit the record button, and it involved. Let me see, one more comment here, and shout out to Gus, aka Corruption in Boxing. I think he's talking about Jaron Boots Ennis. He says a I ring ID in enclosed space, high caliber fighter, and Ennis should have the ability to cut off the ring before minutes of fight time in 12 months. Bad promoting. Yeah, bad promoting. I think what Gus is meaning, bad promoting in the sense that should have put him in with opponents to prepare him for this kind of a fight. I want to try to connect this to what Lee Groves said, that anybody who's seen this guy should have known what they they should have known who they were dealing with, right? And if Ennis, if I'm judging Gus's comments correctly, if Ennis had been in there more with guys who would have pushed him more diversity of styles, he would have been better able to cope with the likes of a Chukhadzhian. Tell me, Gus, if that's what you're trying to say here in the chat. Um, let's move on here to news here, and a lot of the news over the past couple of hours before I hit the record button has involved one Errol Spence. We all know the issues with him and Crawford last year, right? It's been long rumored that he is going to fight Keith Thurman. Uh, Announcement this afternoon, or right before we begin the show, that there the bout is almost a done deal. But the interesting thing here, Gail and Daniel, is that the fight between the two is not going to happen at 154, at 147, excuse me. To the contrary, it's going to happen at 154. Uh, Bo, who's been a previous guest on the show, penned an article for Three Kings Boxing. He makes the argument that Spence, this is a sign that Spence is just about ready to move up to 154 pounds. To me, uh, it's snarky, it's cheeky, um, shrewd on the bit of Spence, even showing kind of an asshole side of him, that he's going to take this fight with Keith Thurman at 154 pounds. To me, Gail and Daniel, he has put the ball in Crawford's court. He's going to take this fight here. His belts are not on the line. He gets this fight, and if he wins impressively. The crowd will be on his side, and he'll probably say after the fight, "If you want to fight me, if you want to fight this bad, meet me at 154 pounds. But what are you going to do?" Your reaction to this latest news regarding um, Spence and the fight with Thurman happening at junior middleweight, not welterweight?
I am not in the least surprised, really, because for months I've been predicting that we would see Spence versus Terrence Crawford at 154 because they dragged this damn thing out so long that eventually they both need to move up a division. Well, here is Errol Spence taking that out for a spin against Keith Thurman. This is genius. This is a wily decision on his part. He gets to test himself at 154, see how he performs. He doesn't risk his belts at 147, right? So, God forbid a disaster happens and he loses to Keith. Oh, well, but he's still a welterweight champion. He lost at 154. But if he really roars out of the gate, he feels good, and he decides, screw it. I don't need to go back down to 147. No way. There's a lot for him to do at 154, and he can stick it to Bud by saying, "Oh, you still want to fight me? Well, you blew your chance a few months ago. Now, if you want me, you got to come chase me up at 154. I think this is a master plan by Spence. And I don't hate this fight. I really don't. Keith Thurman, do I think he is a real threat against Errol Spence? No, I don't. But he'll give a good, honest effort. Um, he'll try his best. He'll bring the action. He's not afraid to engage. It'll be entertaining. And for all of the efforts, the good fights Keith's given us over the years, I don't mind if he gets a few big paydays like this on his way out the door. I am perfectly okay with that. The lead up to the fight will be fun. He's great with interviews. He's just an interesting dude. A little bit nutty, but hey, it makes it fun. I'm very impressed how this is playing out. I really am.
Lee in the chat says Spence Crawford is a great match, but the real luster of this fight is that the undisputed 147-pound title should be on the line. Remove the high stakes and the fight is lesser than it can be. He also says, let me put it up here in public for those who are watching. He says, so Thurman is current number one WBC contender, but the fight is going to be over the limit. Will this be counted as fulfilling a mandatory? Here's the thing.
Details, man. Details.
For me, and I'll go to you on this one, Daniel. It's not about the belts anymore. It's not about undisputed at welterweight. This is about Spence, in his mind, being fed up, being essentially saying enough with the BS. The narrative that's being portrayed, that he feels that Bud is portraying in terms of why the fight didn't get made last year. Bud is saying one thing. Spence, in Spence's mind, it's not the case. And he says, Bud, if you're going to make this argument, okay, fine. I'm going to pull this move on you. And again, what are you going to do? If you want this fight so bad, he just had a title defense. And Terrence said afterwards that his goal is still to fight Spence. Okay. In my mind, Spence is like, okay, if you want to do so, meet me at this weight. If you're really about that.
This has become a game of chicken, pretty much.
Right.
This has become a game of chicken, but it's just in games with different avenues because the fight itself, at this stage of Thurman's career, he's not much of a threat to Spence. Where being at 147 or now 154, because one, Keith has never fought at 154, but since he's older than Spence, it may be a tougher adjustment for him than it would be probably for Spence. But hey, if it gets him in the ring, if we get Spence in the ring, that's a good thing because at the rate it's going with car accidents, like I said, he'll get hit, he'll get T-boned by a 10-year-old if he's left to his own devices. But what's interesting is what happens if he does blow out Keith? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Mel part of the training circle, part of the entourage as well? Because that's going to provide a very, very interesting working environment. Because you go 154, you know who you're challenging. And what's also interesting is that we have to remember Bud holds the WBO title. And the WBO rules does state that a former champion can immediately challenge for the next weight division up if he chooses to. What if Spence blows out Keith and he says, okay, Bud, fight it this weight. But Bud says, I'm not fighting for titles. I'm fighting for titles. I'm fighting for legacy. So I'm moving up to 154, but I'll challenge the winner of Charlo Zoo. So now you went up in that area because now you're a situation where let's play this scenario out. Whether it's Mellor Zoo and Bud wins, then Bud holds all the cards at that point. So like, oh, you want to fight more 54? I'm undisputed now. Why do I need to fight you? Or if you're gonna fight me, it's 75-25. Take it or leave it. So there's gonna be an interesting machination happening now between these two because first they unfortunately both outgrew the division that they're in. But it could also be a situation where their own pride could get in the way and we see more roadblocks to this fight not happening.
An interesting web these two are trying to uh, 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 weave here. This is a game of chicken. This is also their version of boxing chess. What we know now is that Spence and Thurman is a close to being a done deal. Um, we got the first and foremost. First and foremost, Spence has got to beat Thurman, and that's not a complete guarantee. In spite of the fact that Thurman hasn't looked great in fights, and he's been largely inactive. Right? It's still if Thurman brings his A game, it's a good competitive fights, and you can't count Thurman out. But should he win, the ball will be in Terrence Crawford's corner, and we will see what he does in reaction to this. It's certainly, at the very least, something to keep an eye on. Um, uh, juicy tidbit here, and we will see where it goes for all parties involved. Um, Another bit of news that broke during today was regarding Anthony Joshua. Um, the word on the street is that he's going to return to the ring April the 1st. Opponent is not finalized. There are rumors out there who's a front runner um, to fight AJ in April. The fight's proposed for April the 1st in London, England. You can go to Three Kings Boxing. We wrote on this. You can find it on the front page of threekingsboxing.com. Another bit of news, another thing connected to this, Daniel, is that Joshua could have another trainer in fold. Um, Word is swirling that Derek James and Joshua have made a deal. James is going to be the new trainer of Joshua now, supposedly. What's the latest? Have you heard on that?
Yeah, that looks to be the route that he's going. He's trying to go into a route where he feels that he could work on certain skills that he probably wasn't able to perfect under Robert Garcia. But the bad part about it is, unfortunately, you're not gonna improve much with a new trainer, and you're not really gonna see much of what you can improve if if this opponent is dealing white. At this point of White's career, you've already beaten him before when you guys were contenders. And at this stage, it should be a layup for Joshua, no matter who is going to be training them. But hopefully, this situation where they're James made an agreement that this is going to be for long term. You're not going to do this one fight deal thing where it doesn't work. You lost to Usyk. You lost worse to Usyk this time. And so you're trying to find a formula to win because at the end of the day, until somebody takes those belts off the man, the ultimate goal is still Usyk. Because I think right now the Fury train has left the station, especially if other news that I'm hearing about in other areas have been confirmed. So Hopefully, it's the case. Hopefully, it's the case that he stays around for a little bit longer. Now, the question is also going to be, will he fully relocate to the U.S.? Because that was also an issue, I think, when it came to his relation with Robert Garcia, was that he was still mostly based in the UK. He has to fully dedicate. If you're going to go to Derek James's camp, you have to fully dedicate it. He's not going to accept part timers. So we have to see where Anthony Joshua is going to position himself at this stage. But it should be a decent move. Derek James can work on a little bit more of his hand speed, can work on better part of his defense. I wouldn't see a drastic improvement on it. I still say he probably should have went with Joe Diaz, but luckily Derek James is a decent trainer. He knows what he's doing. He's not simply going to be a yes man.
Undefeated Australian Ramsey McKeon had an interview earlier today saying that he's the front runner to fight AJ on April the 1st. You can see that article on 3kingsboxing.com. And again, it looks like Derek James is going to be the new trainer of AJ. We here on Pound for Pound Box Report will keep you updated on the latest developments regarding Joshua and his proposed rumored return to the ring. Yeah, and to your point, it'll be let's hope, because I thought Robert Garcia was going to be a longer relationship with AJ, but they basically parted ways after Joshua's rematch loss to Usyk August of last year. Just don't know the direction that Joshua wants to go. It's on paper, it seems like him and James would be a good relationship in terms of trainer fighter, but we will see. We will see. We will see when he returns to the ring. More news to talk about here. Well, before that, you want to have a quick word on this, Gail, or do you want to move on?
I am disappointed that Joshua didn't give Robert Garcia more of a serious go. I I I think that it's a matter of geography. Anthony needs to be uncomfortable. He needs to train away from home, away from the spotlight. He needs to be out here in Southern California, where frankly everyone assumes he's either, you know, a wide receiver or he plays basketball, for somebody that don't know. And nobody knows him. He gets good sparring out here. No one gives a rip about how famous or how rich he is back in the UK. It's dog eat dog in these Southern California gyms, especially in the Inland Empire. There's plenty enough big guys who, take him to school. And if you really, really let Robert work him, humble him, he'd improve. But he's comfortable. He's comfortable enough with where he is that he doesn't want to put himself through that. I don't think that speaks well for his future accomplishments. He's content with just good enough. I think that's the problem.
Let's move to this final news bit here before we decide to call it a day in terms of the show. Last week we talked about disputed draw between WBO champion Kazuto Ioka and WBA super champion Joshua Franco. All three of us watched the fight live, right? Shout out to Mikey Garcia, who basically streamed the fight from ringside on his phone. He was in the corner of Franco. Mikey Garcia, brother, the aforementioned Robert Garcia, is the trainer of Joshua Franco. A lot of speculation in the aftermath of that draw in terms of what Ioka will do next, and that's because heading into that fight, there was rumors that Ioka was interested in a fight with one with 1-1 for Cisco Estrada, two division champion. As a matter of fact, Estrada and hope to have Gail back. She may have some connection issues. Estrada Daniel was in attendance for that fight with between Ioka and Franco, but hovering over that contest was a decision made by the WBO, who before that fight they ruled that the winner of the fight between Ioka and Franco has to fight WBO mandatory challenger, former flyweight champion Junto Nakatani. Well, yesterday the WBO officially ordered that Ioka must begin negotiations to fight Nakatani. They have 30 days to make the to come to a deal. If not, the fight will go to purse bids. The question I have I'm putting on the table and hope to have Gil back. Um, do you think that Ioka will carry on, will go on with that with the WBO's ruling, or do you think he would dare vacate the WBO title and still try to make a fight with Gallo Estrada?
The situation is pretty tricky, but I see Gail's back to one of the ladies first on it because it's a tricky situation. But ladies first.
I think it's a coin toss for him, really. I think he'll lean toward being as ambitious as possible. I mean, in Japan, there's such a big fan base. You can kind of cruise along there, make a very good living, be as famous as you want to be. But it's a fight with Estrada that would put him on a world stage. And if he's ambitious in that way and daring in that way, that's the direction he'll need to go in.
Your thoughts, Daniel?
What's opening up is one sense that, yeah, the Nakatani fight is guaranteed good money, big arena. It's in Japan, so you don't have to worry about many travel issues for Kazuto. But then there is the prospect that, yeah, I might as well go for the gusto now, especially after I was lucky enough to get a draw in my last fight to keep this belt. But it would also mean, yeah, going to here to fight Gallo, and it would mean probably being stripped of the title. But for Gallo, he said he wants to be undisputed. If you're in Gallo's camp and a fight with Kazuto means you're not fighting for the WBO title, would you do it if you're in Gallo's camp? I don't think you would if your goal is to be undisputed. So that's the tricky part of the situation is, can you make a deal with the WBO where, and they should if it involves like unifying divisions, have a big unification fight, and in the meantime, probably have a good fight for Nakatani, have him fight Franco, and then the winners of those two fights, those two meet. That could be the area where they may position themselves to, because the Nakatani fight from an economic standpoint is a safe one. The Gallo fight's the more legacy making, but you have to bring something to the table at this stage.
And despite Ioka's accomplishment, right? 4 division champion, and one-time unified champion at a lower weight. Some of the shine went away with that fight against Franco. The anticipation heading in that Ioka's experience, his guile, his boxing, high boxing IQ would be too much for Franco. But Franco took the fight to him from jump. Many people argue that he deserved the decision. And yeah, the reputation took a bit of a hit from Ioka as a result. And you mentioned bringing something to the table. Uh, the level of interest in a fight against Gallo now not as strong as it was, let's just say, days before the fight against Franco. So we will see where excuse me, Ioka does. Will he abide by the WBO's ruling and fight Nakatani, who, for those who don't know, Junto Nakatani is a heck of a talent. Heck of a talent. I see Gus is still in the chat. I wish I'd have had him on for this particular segment because um, among people in this boxing social media space, YouTube space, um, very, very knowledgeable, very, very astute observer when it comes to the smaller weights, and particularly the smaller weights vis-a-vis Japan. I always give him credit. Um, he was one of the first, maybe the first in this space to talk about um, Naoya Inoue. Uh, he was talking about him. He was talking about Naoya Inoue and saying that he was going to be one of the greats, going back to 2013, early 2013. He saw the potential then. So I always got to give a shout out to Gus in that regard. And in comment here, he was saying in the discussion about AJ, Gus said that he agreed with you, Gail. He agreed with you, Gail. He says AJ was much better in the rematch. Garcia's strategy was well calibrated. And to his point, after 8-9 rounds, Joshua was right there. He had Usyk in distress. But as we said when breaking down that fight late last summer, Usyk from round 10 on, he just went full blitzkrieg mode and just, he basically wilded out in that last 3 rounds. He just found a second, third, and fourth win all at the same doggone time and just overwhelmed Joshua. And there was nothing AJ could do. And I think we're going to end things on that note. Oh, one more thing he says. Want us to talk about this thing here. Lee Wood versus Mauricio Lara May. What a great fight. Yeah, they're going to fight next month. Daniel, Gail, quick word on that. On paper, that looks to be a sensational matchup.
I'll tell you what, this has been a rough week. Daniones Ortiz falls out. Before that, Charlo Zhu falls out. Which one was the third one that fell out? Damn, it's just been rough. And then we get roaring through to the rescue, Wood and Lara. Hell yes, sign me up. This is going to be a fun, action-packed fight with some real stakes. The crowd will be lit. I can't wait.
Lee Wood, many people, Daniel, remember his last fight, the dramatic, highly dramatic last round KO over Michael Conlon, pulling victory out of the jaws of defeat. Mauricio Lara, many hardcore heads remember his 2 fights with Josh Warrington, particularly their first fight in which Lara just overwhelmed, blitz, mollywop Josh Warrington, stopped him in the 9th round. Lara, yeah, he can be hit. He leaves himself open, but he has a heck of a punch for a featherweight. Lee Wood, don't be fooled by the knockout percentage. He can really, really crack as well. And he's not the sharpest defensively. This looks to be a knockdown, drag out fight.
Oh yeah, this is gonna be fun. This is gonna be fun. First of all, I forgot. Is this gonna be for the WBA featherweight title?
Yes.
Because if I remember, Santa Cruz vacated it. Yes. Okay. Good, because Mauricio Lara deserves a shot at a featherweight title, especially with the way that Josh Warrington cowardly ran away from him. Let's keep it a buck here. But this is gonna be a knockout draw. Lee Wood highly motivated, coming off, like I said, but I picked to be knockout of the year. And against somebody that was positioned to be fast tracked for a title, Mike Conlon. versus someone like Mauricio Lara that came into the scene and just beat the living crap out of Josh Warrington and didn't get his chance and didn't get a shot at the rematch. So this is going to be a very fun fight. This is going to be very entertaining. It is a good consolation prize after some of the fights that we were expecting and getting delayed. But let's keep it rolling. And because I think this fight is going to be on the zone, if I remember correctly. So it's one of the good things that you still keep your DAZN subscription, folks, because some good fights may be coming along the way, along with other things.
Yeah, and let's just face it. For the fellas fighting, you need something like this because last year, y'all, the men, I have to say it, disappointed big time. And the women shine, and they're going to continue to shine, given the card next month with Amanda Serrano. She's fighting for undisputed. At 126, Alicia Baumgartner is fighting for the undisputed at 130 pounds. They're fighting on the same card. Eddie Hearn said earlier today that he thinks that the rematch, if Serrano wins, that he believes that a rematch with Serrano and Taylor will happen in May in Ireland, right? Michaela Mayer is making her return to the ring against Lenartau, who gave Baumgartner her only defeat. There's rumblings that a rematch between Shields and Marshall could happen either this summer or early fall, possibly in the United States. Sinisa Estrada, she's fighting for unification down at, I think, at 105. So the ladies are continuing the momentum in 2023. And the fellas, yeah, need to step your game up. As the crew over at Three Kings Boxing have said repeatedly, and I agree with them. The ladies, they ran the sport in 2023, and they're doing the damn thing here. They ran the sport in 2022, and they're continuing to do the damn thing in 2023. Step your game up, man. Step your game up. And I think we're going to end on that. Wait, one more thing here. Lee says Super El Matias and Ponce is another good fight. Yeah, that's happening at 140 pounds as well. So yeah, it looks like the fellas are stepping their game up, and we finally seeing some good fights in the first quarter of this year. And we're going to end the show on that note. If you like what you've heard this evening, again, please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button, that notification, so you'll get all updates on future episodes of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. The more likes, the more notifications. It'll help the overall algorithms. It'll help us get closer to being the more likes, the more notifications, and subscribe as well. It'll get us closer to being monetized. I want to thank everybody who joined us in the live chat. Gus from Corruption and Boxing, mutual friend, League Roles, mutual friend. Appreciate your comments and your questions throughout. Going to go around the panel here. Begin the show with ladies first. End the show with ladies first. Gail from NY Fights, for those who want to talk to Sweet Science, for those who want to check you out occasionally on TMZ Live. Let the folks know where they can find you.
You check me out right there where you see that logo, nyfights.com is where our coverage is. I am covering this weekend's Battle of the Big Men. Efe Ajagba, Stephen Shaw, should be a lot of fun. Gianni Vanello on the undercard, co-main. If you like the heavyweights, ESPN has got it for you this Saturday. And Efe Ajagba has been in some crazy ass fights. That's all I'm going to say. You never know what's going to happen. And if you want to chat boxing with me, I am at PR Pro San Diego.
Yeah, Efe Ajagba headlining an event this weekend on ESPN, I believe. He hits hard.
Yep.
He hits hard, but
but he can be hit.
Right. So thriller minute guy.
Yeah.
Definitely. I'll go
and
to
he's,
you, Daniel.
And he's motivated because he suffered his first loss on the Canelo Triple G3 undercard to Cuban heavyweight Frank Sanchez. Got his ass got boxed around the whole fight. So
Absolutely.
I think he wants to make a statement. Stephen Shaw is an undefeated heavyweight out of St. Louis who trains in San Diego, who stepped up. He was originally Vianello's opponent. Now he gets to be in the main event. This is a big, big opportunity for him. So both of these guys have something to prove. The winner goes on to be, you know, maybe an opponent for one of the big names in the heavyweight division. The other guy, I wouldn't call him the G word gatekeeper just yet, but they're in trouble.
Indeed, indeed. I go to you, Daniel, from Four Boxing News and the Inscriber. And please check out his latest episodes of the Inscriber podcast where he talks about uh, Deep Sigh, the return of Vincent McMahon to WWE. Why is he doing this? And Daniels gives us an exclusive commentary on that for those who want to talk about the sweet science, for those who want to talk professional wrestling, for those who want to talk the NBA, especially when it comes to the Miami Heat. Let the folks know where they can find you.
Yes, and on good news, Miami Heat beat the Oklahoma City Thunder today. Set a record, by the way, for the NBA. 40 free throw attempts, no misses. First time the team that's had that been perfect, I think, in a few years. But like I said, Elon hasn't burned down Twitter yet, so it's RAWKUZ99 on Twitter. But that's also the handle on Mastodon and Hive, and it'll be the handle on Post too. Once I'm up on Post. But yeah, I may not stay up late tonight, but oh man, if the last half hour from what I'm reading is true, this is the darkest timeline if you're a wrestling fan in the United States.
I'll ask you about it after the show. For those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness, you know what it is with me on Twitter, brother JR76. For those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness, and fragrance, you can check me out on Twitter, not on Twitter, excuse me, on TikTok and IG, brother JRSC. If you notice, for those who check me out on those two platforms, couple of fragrance videos that I dropped. I'm in the process of trying to put some content to drop a new fragrance series of fragrance videos. Winter fragrances. Next series should be fragrances I'm looking forward to wearing in 2023. So look forward to that. On the next episode, I don't know if we'll have a show next week. If we do, we will talk about the aforementioned F.A. Ajagba. There's also a unification bout on the weekend of the 13th. Kim Clavo fighting Jessica Nari Plaza, unification bout, fighting at junior flyweight. F.A. Ajagba's fighting. He's fighting on the 14th in Verona, New York. Interesting prospect to check out on the undercard of that is Bruce Carrington, Shushu Carrington. Of that 2020 ish U.S. Olympic class. I know people talk about Keyshawn Davis, but Shushu Carrington is the guy who I got my eye on in particular. I really like him, rising featherweight prospect. If we're back next week, we will break down that card, and because in truth, the next couple of weekends are kind of light, so I may hold things off and kind of do like round everything up in a couple of weeks, because on the 21st, Chris Eubank Jr. is fighting Liam Smith. So again, I want to thank everybody who joined us on this particular live episode. Again, if you're checking us out on YouTube, either now or later on, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Thank everybody with their commentary. Lee, Gus, aka Corruption in Boxing. For Gail from nyfights.com. Daniel from Four Boxing News and the Inscriber. I am your host, Michael. This has been episode 390 of the Pound for Pound Box Report. We will see you guys next time. Hamlin got the kid from the Buffalo Bills. Fantastic news yesterday as he was released from hospital and is back home now. So really, really great news for the sports community in large. So yeah, shout out to the kid from the Buffalo Bills. He is on the mend. Let's just say he is on the mend. Again, episode 390 of Pound for Pound Box Report. We will see you guys next time. Y'all have a good one.